We are now entering into week 9 of fantasy hockey. The season's gone by so fast, but don't give up right now, especially if your team's struggling. These videos will help you maximize your games played each and every week to give you the best possible opportunity to win against your opposing manager. I'm going to break down the best and worst schedules for this week. There are a ton of 4-game schedules this week, so you're definitely going to want to stay tuned to that and see which teams we want to be picking from. My name's Mike, and let's jump into the video. So this week, the busy nights, December 5th, 7th, and 9th, the 3 days where you likely don't want to be adding players because your roster is going to be full with your existing roster that will likely be playing in those nights. There are only 2 teams this week with 2-game schedules, the Leafs and the Bruins. They just had a great matchup on Saturday. Hopefully you guys caught that game. And then there are a bunch of teams with 3 games on 3 busy nights. I don't need to name all the teams, but if you own some of these players, I always say this, don't panic on them. Don't drop them because they have a lousy schedule this week, because each and every week this schedule varies and teams will have those 4-game 3-off night weeks or the 4-game 4-off night weeks. So if you stream players from any of these teams on the screen right now, then those streamers can likely go back into the free agency unless they have long-term value, which you can assess, or you can just ask us in the comments below what you should be doing with some of these players. I know this week there's probably gonna be some questions about Elias Lindholm. He had a good game last night, so hopefully he can keep that going. But I would not be panicking if I owned any players on these teams in the busy nights for this coming week. Probably skipped ahead to here. This is the juiciest part of the video. The off nights this week, there are 4 days, December 4th, 6th, 8th, and 10th. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. Sunday is the day that I really like to hone in on grabbing players just because it's the end of the week, and sometimes your opponent, they may think they have a matchup in the bag, and then you add 2-3 guys and then you make a huge comeback. But this week we have some intriguing schedules. There are 5 teams that I'm going to be prioritizing this week. Vegas and St. Louis are going to be my top priorities with 4 games and 3 off nights. And then there are also 3 teams with 3 games and 3 off nights with Edmonton, Florida, and Pittsburgh. The issue with 2 of these 3 teams, Edmonton and Pittsburgh, is they're very top 6 heavy and they're top power play unit heavy. And all of those players are very, very high owned. So it's really hard to pick streamers from both of those teams. But Florida, you know who I'm going to be talking about in this video, about someone that I want to be streaming this week. There are also another handful of teams with 4 games and 2 off nights this week. I'm not going to be prioritizing them as much because there are 5 other very good options that can give you that 1 extra game and hopefully give you the edge over your opponent. This is a very jam-packed schedule this week. I actually anticipate it to be one of the highest scoring fantasy weeks for the rest of the season. So it's going to be really interesting how this plays out. But now let's jump over to our forward priority streamers. At the time of recording, just 36% of you are subscribed to the channel. So if you've enjoyed the content so far, make sure you subscribe to stay up to date with all the content that we're going to be pumping out for the rest of the season. In addition, we have updated our projections for the rest of the season. If you're interested in gaining access to that, head on over to our Patreon. The link will be in the description. If you have any questions, make sure you leave a comment in this video or simply message me on Discord. Let's jump back into the video, guys. So as I mentioned, the 2 teams I want to be prioritizing here are Vegas and St. Louis because of the 4 games and 3 off nights. The first player, Chandler Stevenson, 25% owned. He does have that center position eligibility and nothing else, so you may be handcuffed there if you're a setter heavy team, but he's currently on line 3, skating power play 1. They kind of have a power play 1 A and B, but still intriguing. With Stevenson, you don't get very much peripherals, but there is pretty decent point upside in the goals, assist, and the power play point department. And he does play on December 10th, which is Sunday, and something I want to be prioritizing is scheduling those players in on the last day of the week. Secondly, Ivan Barbashev, someone I was super high on going into the season, but he just hasn't impressed. But he still is skating on the top line with Jack Eichel, and he does have dual position eligibility, which gives you some flexibility this week at the center left wing position. He plays the same schedule as Stevenson, so he does have that Sunday night game. Barbashev has a lot more peripheral upside. His shot volume is not as intriguing, but he does add some hits, and then skating top line with Jack Eichel, who's been very strong this season, does give him some pretty strong point upside. Brayden Schenn here, another guy very similar to Barbashev. He plays much bigger minutes than Barbashev, but he does have a pretty solid shot and hit mix, as well as skating on line 2, power play 1. But again, another centerman, 42% owned, so it may be for those 8 to 10 team leagues. Very strong schedule this week, with December 9th being the bad night. Doesn't play on the Sunday, but I think there's really no worry there. And lastly, Jake Neighbors, someone I just brought up in my must-add players video. He's just a full opportunity type of guy who has been putting the puck in the back of the net while also adding some shots and hits. So very intriguing player here. He's 14% rostered. He's in the left wing eligible, and he's skating top line, power play 1. Bigger minutes as of late, a former first-round pick. So if you're looking for a more of a punt play in those 12-team leagues, take a chance on Jake Neighbors here to hopefully put 2-3 goals up this week while adding 10 shots and 10 hits. Now the second bundle forward, as I mentioned, I want to be streaming players from Edmonton and Pittsburgh, but if you go through their roster, everyone in their top 6 and their top power play unit are well over 60% owned, especially the relevant ones. So I'm not going to be prioritizing those teams this week because there's just really no good stream options. The first guy here, we have Paul Cotter. This is way more of a deeper league type of player, but he's a centerman skating line 2, very solid hit volume. There was a time in the season where a lot of players were asking me whether they should be picking up Cotter or not. This may be the week, especially in those deeper leagues, if you want to just add some solid hit and shot volume. With Sam Bennett here, I don't have to give you the spiel, but I'm going to. I love everything about Bennett this week. 3 off-night games. He's a center eligible, skating line 2 with Matt Tkachuk, a former 100-point player who has been struggling, but hopefully gets hot at some point. But he's also skating on the top power play unit. This may be the last week for you to be able to roster Sam Bennett. I expect that ownership percentage to skyrocket now with the new opportunity. He gives you a great hit and shot mix, as well as opportunity to put up points while he's skating on the top power play unit. Evan Rodriguez, triple position eligible this week, so very, very intriguing option, giving you the maximum flexibility in your lineup. I kind of want him to see him play a couple games in net or on defense to get him the 5 position eligibility. I don't know if we'll ever see that in the NHL, but with Evan Rodriguez, 32% rostered, skating line 1 still with Alexander Barkov and Carter Verhaeghe, and power play 2, 3 off nights this week, so very intriguing option at 32% rostered. Lastly, I just wanted to pick out another player. It was really, really hard to find another guy, given, like I mentioned, with a lot of these top 6s being extremely full and extremely high owned. But Anton Lundell gives you some upside at line 3, power play 2, 15 to 16 minutes per night, at just 3% rostered, someone you can look to roster in those deeper leagues. Defensemen were not easy to come by either this week, but there are a handful that I like. Torrey Krug is the first one. I really like the schedule for St. Louis, and you're getting a power play 1 defenseman at just 28% rostered, so he's likely available in those 10 to 12, even 14 team leagues. It's really contingent on how deep the defenseman pool is and what the scoring is. But Krug recently has had pretty solid shot and block volume, as well as some decent point upside in the top power play unit. I know this team has been struggling a little bit to score, but still, 4 games this week, 3 off nights, power play 1 defenseman. He's the only power play 1 defenseman that was under 40% rostered on the 5 teams that I mentioned, so definitely intriguing there. Colton Parayko, another guy that's just a category coverage type of defenseman, where he'll give you shots, hits, and blocks with some decent point upside. He plays big minutes on pair 1. If there's not a lot of special teams, Parayko goes well over 25 minutes a night. So a lot to like here from Parayko, just 7% rostered if you really want a guy with solid floor, whereas Torrey Krug's a guy where you rely on the ceiling for him to get a couple power play points to really put up points for the week for you. Matthias Ekholm, someone that's been really skyrocketing in the last little bit. He's been very good. He's been shooting, he's been blocking. He pretty much does everything and plays solid minutes on pair 1, power play 2 for the Edmonton Oilers. 3 off nights. This is the only Oiler I'm going to recommend because it's the only Oiler relevant to recommend under 50% rostered. Lastly, Braden McNabb. He's been a beast recently. 48 blocks in the last 30 days. So he's been extremely strong peripheral wise and maybe better than Parayko, but the roster percentage is extremely high at 45%. So he may be a 10-team league type of streamer. A guy that can give you a really solid floor like Radko Gudas with shots, hits, blocks. So definitely interested in looking at streaming one of these 4 defensemen or multiple defensemen for this coming week. Goalies this week, there are 3 goalies I want to be looking at to stream. I was trying to look at goalies that played in back-to-back nights that would get the off night back-to-back. Philip Grubauer seems to be the first one on December 10th, the Sunday versus Minnesota. They play on the Saturday night, and I assume it's going to be Joey Decord. Definitely keep an eye on it to see if it's going to be Grubauer or Decord for that Saturday game, and then I would just be adding the opposite goalie for the Sunday game. Very similar here with the Capitals. Now, I did not know Charlie Lindgren was injured. He's day-to-day, so he may be back Sunday. If not, Hunter Shepard has a game on the road against a 7-15 Chicago team. So definitely be looking to stream whoever will be starting that isn't Darcy Kemper in this Sunday matchup. I assume it's not going to be Kemper because they do play on the Saturday. And finally, Joel Hofer here. This is more of a midweek ad. They have 2 games at Columbus on December 8th and at Chicago December 9th. So I'm not entirely sure what game Hofer is going to get, but I would definitely be looking at him for one of these 2 games. The 8th is a busier night, so you may have 2 goalies already starting for you. So I'm really hoping he gets that December 9th game at Chicago. It looks like a pretty solid matchup. He's just 7% rostered, so he's likely available in your 10 to 14 team leagues. That will do it for the Week 9 schedule recap. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next video.